Welcome back. In this video, I am putting an Edelbrock carburetor on an engine that actually had a Holly on it. And I'm going to show you how to set it up and make it work right for and all the little trips and so if you watched my last video, you would have seen a 1968 Mustang Fastback GT. It was like a bullet style car. And in part of getting it running, I put a Edelbrock carburetor on it to get rid of this old Holly that had bad throttle shafts on it. And because that's what the customer wanted. He wanted Edelbrock. He likes Edelbrock. So I went with it. And now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do on this one to install it. It's not really taking it out of the box and hooking it up. And there's a couple more steps involved. So watch how I do this, and I hope you can help me out. Watch how I do this, and I hope it's real helpful. Alright, this is what we ordered for the Mustang. It's a Edelbrock 1403. It's a 500 CFM carburetor. It's got electric choke. Normally I would go with a 600, but this is a stock 302. It really doesn't need a 600, and this way I won't have to worry about adjusting the jets or anything like that. And if you're wondering why I'm not just going to throw it on, is because I've had a lot of bad luck with the floats not being adjusted correctly on these. So I am going to take the lid off and adjust the floats before I put it on. That way I can save myself a headache later. So first thing you got to do is, if you never adjusted the floats on an Edelbrock, it's not hard, but you do have to take the lid off. There's 3 of these little tiny clips that you got to take off. Those hold up the linkage rods. There's one on this side. Actually, there's 2 on this side. One for the accelerator pump. And they look like itty bitty tiny hairpins. What do I do with that? Alright. There we go. There's 2, 3. Okay. So you just take the linkage rod. Being stubborn. Come on out of there. There we go. This one over here activates the choke lever. I'm not going to pull it off of that. And then take all the... I'm going to first do these. The first things I do is take these out. These are the metering rods. And the reason why I take them out is because it's much easier to get the lid back on and not worry about bending the metering rods when you try to put the lid back on by trying to get these in their little respective holes, which the holes are the jets. My goodness. I don't even see this. This is like a screw bit clip kit. I usually keep this in the house, but I can't find my number 15 Torx bit in my kit outside, or all my Torx bit sockets. I don't know where they're at. They're on the same little socket strip. So they're all together wherever the hell they are at. See, now we get all the screws out, the lid off, gasket, and what I'm going to measure is the float rise what I'm going to measure here is the float rise, and that's the distance between under here, which is supposed to be 7/16 between. I'm having trouble talking today. 7/16 between the gasket and the bottom of the float, and the best way to check that is with a drill bit. Let me go grab one. Okay. So you want to roll the drill bit underneath the float. Do you see how the float is rising up? See how the float's rising up? That means the float's set too high, which means is that the fuel level will be set too high, because we're looking at this upside down. So this is what happens. See the carburetor here? This is the fuel bowl underneath the float, and the float comes up and it shuts the needle and seat off, which is back there. And if the float's too high, then there's too much fuel in the bowl, and it'll drip over the edge of the boosters through the jets, and you'll never be able to control your idle mixture screws. They'll just you can screw them all the way in and the car still runs. And if you have a carburetor and you can screw the idle mixture screws all the way in and it doesn't stall or even stumble, then you're dripping fuel from someplace. So what I do is you bend it right here. You bend the float right here at the arm. So I put my thumb there, or my finger there, and I bend it up just a bit. And then, yep, see how the float is still rising up a little bit? Keep going. Nope. Now you don't have to worry about, it's not going to be level all the way across. What you want to do is measure right where this becomes level on the bottom here. So just where that curve ends and it starts to level off, that's where you want to measure it at. And do you see how trying to keep your drill bit flat is a little bit hard sometimes. So sometimes you just go like this. And this is just about perfect. Let me go a little more. I hate putting these things on and having to deal with that, having to take them back off and take them apart because the floats aren't set correctly from the factory, which is, it's common. I mean, just like a Holly where you got to set the float level. See how this one's way high as well, like that. See how it comes up like that. There was a time when everybody would adjust these at the factory, but here we go. That's perfect. And then float drop. Oh yeah, if you're gonna do float drop, it's 15/16 from the. It's 15/16 from the gasket down to the car top of the float, basically the same area. So it's like 15/16 of an inch from about like that is what you want to measure, right about there. And I'll do that real quick. They look far. They look too far. I usually keep a tape measure around that came with a carburetor. You look at them, they're 1.25 inches. Yeah, they're over 1 inch down. What's on this side? Let's see, this one is at 3/4 of an inch. So they're not even consistent. Look at the difference in them. They're not even consistent in how far they drop. So on this one I'm gonna raise up, and the way you raise them up is there's a tab right here on the back of the float. See the back of the float? There we go. On the back of the float here, to reduce the amount of float drop, you have to bend this tab towards the needle and seat housing here. And I'm going to use my little... It's sometimes easier just to take it off and do it, which is what I'm going to do here. But you want to try not to bend this area here. So you got to give this a good grip and bend this down just a tiny bit like that. And go in small increments. There's no rush on this stuff. You want to have it right, otherwise you're chasing your tail trying to make the carburetor run right. All right. Now I can just lift it up by my finger here and measure. It's just easier. Yeah, it's pretty close. See, it's much closer. Now I can just bend it up a little bit if I go a little too far. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Now to do the same on this side. This side's too... Let's measure this one here. That's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good. So I'm going to leave that one alone. Float drop isn't so much as important as float rise. The float drop is how much fuel allows. It's not as, I don't really think it's as important as float rise, but I just want it pretty close. So I'm going to put the carburetor back together now. Put the screws back in. I always start them. I do all these screws by hand. And I don't know why I'm talking with a lisp tonight, but I am talking with a lisp. I must have got a swelling on my tongue. And I start the screws by hand to make sure they're being threaded in right. Don't use a power tool on this, okay? I know people like to use power tools on everything. This is a good way to strip out the housing. It's only aluminum. If you strip out the housing, then it's not going to work very well for you. Oh, okay. So what sorry, I turned my camera off for a minute. I didn't even realize it. So what I had to do is I had to get the carburetor to sit on the intake because of this big choke housing. I had to slide the coil forward, but sliding the coil forward put it into the heater hose here. So I raised the coil up. I have a 1-inch spacer underneath here. It's just a 1-inch piece of round stock with a 3/8 bolt hole drilled through it. And now it's up higher and forward, which I kind of like it because it gives it more airspace underneath of it, so it won't get so overheated by the engine itself. And then we just bolted it down. All I did was these are the original screws that were on the old Holly, and I just used a wrench on it because you can't really get a socket on the back ones, and really you don't want to go crazy torquing them. They're supposed to be like a total of like, oh, maybe 8 foot-pounds total. A total of 8 to 10 foot-pounds is your torque for fuel line. I mean for 10 to. I can't speak today. I cannot speak today. It is no more than 10 foot-pounds for carburetor studs. Otherwise, you might break the corner of your carburetor off, and you don't want to be that guy. Because on an Edelbrock, you just can't go buy a base plate. You got to buy another $500 carburetor. So, next up, we're gonna I would get a longer hose. And I'm sorry, my neighbor's mowing lawn, and it sounds like he's mowing up rocks with his lawnmower too. So I think I might run the hose underneath like this, like so, like that, something, I don't know. Yeah, that might work. And then over to the fuel filter. Yeah, I like that. I was gonna get one of the, Edelbrock has one of these nice fuel logs that goes down and straight forward, but this is in the way, so can't do that. So we're just gonna leave this on there, and then we have a Blueprint Engines air cleaner here. See, you get these around town, mainly because you live in the same town as Blueprint Engines, so yeah, no problem. So it'll fit the fuel inlet without a problem. Drop-based air cleaners have a problem with Edelbrocks with this fuel inlet. It doesn't want to work without like a little spacer up here. Okay. Let's see here. This is the vacuum line for the vacuum advance, and I always forget which one's which. And I'm going to need a plug for this and a plug for that because we're not using both of them. And that's about it. Let's get going here. Let's get this piece of fuel line off. Yep, there's still fuel in it. The filter's still completely full. They had a 5/16 fuel filter with 3/8 fuel line on it. I just replaced the fuel filter. And so they had these hose clamps crushing down 3/8 fuel line onto a 5/16 fuel filter, and there we go. I don't know if you ever, these are like, I stole these out of the kitchen. They're for like cutting up chicken bones and stuff. And they work great for all kinds of stuff working in the car. So they also cut fuel line pretty easily. See? Cuts fuel line real easy. There we are. Now I gotta remember, I gotta look at the instructions of which one's ported and which one isn't, because I forget. The kit comes with a couple of these for the small ones up front, but they don't include a vacuum cap for the big 3/8 one up front, which is, I don't know, that's not cool. So this one is your timed vacuum or ported vacuum. 90% of vacuum advances go there. This is manifold vacuum. So if you had an automatic transmission, say like a Chevy with a Turbo 350 with a vacuum modulator, this is where that would connect if it wasn't connected to something in the back of the engine. This is where your distributor is normally connected. So I'm going to go this route. Yeah, cut it up there. Get my chicken bone cutter here. This was a Christmas present for my mother. She thought I was cooking a lot, and I don't have the heart to tell her. I took it in the garage, so. And I'm cutting hoses and it's crap. She doesn't watch these anyway, so what she doesn't know won't hurt her, right? Now I just got to figure out this. They originally went into a hole like right here with that clip. And I don't know if this clip would even work if I drilled out this hole. Maybe. Nope. Nope. So what I'm going to have to do is put this right here, and then I'm going to have to drill a tiny hole here for a cotter pin, which means I got to take it off back here too. Take it off back here, and then because I'm going to have to use a cotter pin through a hole like that in order for this to work right. So yeah, alright, we'll do that. I need a pair of needle nose. All the problems you got to deal with when you're changing carburetor brands. So I'm going to take a drill bit. I'm going to drill through there a cotter pin straight up and down in order for that to work, this linkage rod to work with this carburetor. Okay, so I got the linkage rod hooked up. It goes through the motions like it's supposed to. You want to use your gas pedal to make sure the adjustment's correct so it actually opens all the way. I mean, what's the point of having a 4-barrel if it doesn't open all 4 barrels when you push it to the floor? The thing I'm going to do is, this choke is too tight, so I'm going to adjust it. And I do need to take one of these screws out because I need to add the choke's ground wire. Where's the other one? So that's about, like I say, about the thickness of a screwdriver, like a Phillips head screwdriver, is where you want it. So I got these other 2 screws tightened now. I'm going to take this one out all the way. And Edelbrock's carburetor comes with the power wire and the ground wire. Now the car had an electric choke on it before, so I am not concerned about that. I just rehooked up the power wire that was on the electric choke on the previous carburetor. The wire is pretty long, but hey, I don't feel like shortening it. I'm on time crunch. If this was a show car for a customer, I would spend a lot of time on this, but he wants to drive the car this weekend, and that's starting tomorrow. So there. Dumbass. Remember what screw you use, Scott. I'm going to get some gasoline and prime the carburetor. Okay, what I'm doing here, this right here next to the springs that I showed you earlier, the metering rods, there's a hole both sides. That's the bowl vent. So I'm pouring fuel down into the bowl vent. Alright? And I'm going to do both sides. And then I'm going to work the throttle a little bit just to make sure it's got gas coming out of it. This side over here has got the accelerator pump on it, so okay. There we go. I forgot the keys. Hang on. Oh yeah, and before I start the car, I'm gonna see where these idle mixture screws are at, because I like them about 2 turns out from all the way in. So to start off with, so that's 2, 3, 4. That's 2 turns. It looked like they had about a turn and a half. Yeah. All right, let's see what we get. Let's see if it fires up. Now, I'm going to open my garage door a little more. There we go. The high-speed idle, it's always set way high. I'll readjust. Hey! Damn, those plug wires can get you. Look at that. Runs perfect. Plug wires zap me so bad just by getting my hand anywhere near them. That running perfect almost already. See how it starts to stumble as you screw it in? It means your idle mixture screws are working right. I'm going to drop it all the way in. I'm just going to go, I'm going to go 1.5 turns out. It'll probably like that. And I'll probably get my vacuum gauge out and hook it up. 6 degrees of timing because because the carburetor is working right. It isn't running at 1,000 RPM. So let me get that. A little. Fire it back up. Oh yeah, now it's at 12 degrees. Almost. Be careful sticking your hand down in there. You don't want to get smacked by the fan. I've lost a couple of thumbnails doing that. That's about, I'm lucky that that's all that's happened. Yeah, okay. So let me get my vacuum cleaner. Hey, caramba! Getting electrocuted here by this car. Dang. So setting the auto mixture screws by how much, by the best vacuum reading. Now, when you go in too far and it starts to drop, go back up. Oh, look at that. Likes a little more fuel. I think it's about right where she likes it. There we go. About 18 inches. Alright. I think he's ready for a test drive. Oh yeah, I'm going to adjust the high-speed idle screw down. Now to adjust the high-speed idle, I'm going to come in so you can see it a little better. Okay. Okay, this screw here is your high-speed idle down here, and it's set way too high. So I'm going to go out a couple of turns here, like that. Let's see that. Yeah, it's still too high. It's just common for them to set it on the high side. That way you can adjust it yourself. Let's see where it's at now. So high that it makes it and I'm doing this all by ear. There's a tachometer in the car, but it isn't very accurate. That's a little bit too much. See where we're at with that. All right, I'm gonna so what I'm doing is I'm pulling up the high-speed step cam on the choke, and that way I can check it just by starting it up, and I can do that when the engine's hot. I don't have to wait for it to get cold again. As well as this is running, I don't have to pump the gas to get it to restart for the most part. Let's see here. That's good. All right. Hey, now that it's running really good, let's go for a test drive, huh? One of the perks of the job. Make it run good, then you get to drive the really cool car.